Alright, so let's talk about patching up a tube, and if you can see the puncture holes, I actually have two here, and there's some white fiber that's right there where those puncture holes are. Now that's unique to my tube because I've actually been testing out flat out tire sealant here, actually two different kinds. So I have this batch here, there's a Sportsman edition and a standard edition. And the reason why the fibers are here is because I got a little flat. The tire was getting low on one of my rides and I pumped it up and it resealed itself and stayed aired up over the weekend, a couple of days. And then I started to lose some air again on a 13-mile ride and I pumped it up and it sealed itself back up. And then on my third ride, it eventually lost all of the air and was no longer holding the air. And I found out that I actually had a metal staple that was lodged in my tire. And so no matter what I had in here, tire sealant or no, it was going to keep having issues because the metal staple had worked its way inside of the tire so that I couldn't see it from the outside, and it was just puncturing this or stabbing this multiple times as I was riding. So I do have to say I've been super impressed with that flat out, but I'll have an update video on that. I'm actually doing a pretty extensive test on that. I've put on about 500 miles of testing this stuff out. I'm going to continue to test it out and I'll eventually put out that video, but let's talk about this patch here. So the first step that I want to do is I want to go ahead and just mark the spot all around it with this black marker here. I just want to make sure that I scrape enough of this area off because you're going to want to sand it down. This is just a really cheap patch kit that I have that I'm going to use to sand this area down, then apply my rubber cement to, and then this just simple patch here that I have, simple patch kit, that will work just fine. So I'm going to let this dry and then I'll come right back to it. And then I know I already have the tire and everything off, but I just wanted to show how not hard it is to take these rear tires off. I've been told by a lot of people that it's really impossible and hard to take off. I was told these bikes are harder to work on, so it costs more to actually work on them because they're heavy and they're harder. But I just wanted to show it's a pretty simple process. This kind of connects together. If you're at all familiar with sound systems and things like that, these look very much like mic connections. So you just connect them in and screw them together. You unscrew them and this pulls right out. You wrap it around this way. Sometimes there's a zip tie that's going to connect these. I use some Velcro wraps to connect all of the cables together right here so I don't have to keep using zip ties. And then you simply, once you've loosened them, it's just like any other kind of 10-speed bike system with the derailleur on the back end. You simply can push back to get the chain up and out of your way. That's kind of the hardest part. And then you kind of just have to force it up and the chain will actually get out of your way and you can pull it right out. It's really not a hard system at all. You don't have to mark it, obviously. If you're out and about, you need to do this repair on the side of the road. You don't have a marker on you. I mean, the marker is not necessary. It's just helpful because as you can see, that white fiber has disappeared. But when I go to place the patch here in a little bit, I'm gonna still be able to see where I wanted to put my patch, okay? So I really want to scrape this up quite a bit because I want to make sure that there's enough grip, enough area for the sealant to get into. And I definitely want to avoid the seam. Thankfully, my patch is going to fit on the inside of this seam. Otherwise, I would need to sand that seam down or it would actually interfere with the patch. And I would want to get that nice and flat. But thankfully, it's going to fit just on the inside of that seam, so I don't have to worry about it. Most of these come with a little tip on the end. Just got to really work it in there. There we go. Got that open. Got some on myself. That's okay. All right, so then what we're going to do is we're just going to kind of spread this out all over the tube right here. It is dry, so it's just a little tacky in here, which is what we want. And so I'm gonna go ahead and peel the backing off of this here, leaving the plastic on the top. And we're just going to simply flatten this out. Try not to stretch it, but flatten it out so that I can place this guy on top here, just like so. And then I like to use my tire removing tool to just kind of like really smush this down, especially the edges, okay? And we should see those really, really smushing in and kind of like getting all worked into that glue. And like I said, I leave the plastic on. I want the plastic to stay. I don't take it off. It's what most people recommend, actually. And what you'll be looking for is that orange strip around the edges. You don't want it to peel up away from the tube. That's how you'll know it's ready to go back into your tire. All right, so like I said, when you kind of like start to roll it, you can see the plastic's gonna come up, but that orange strip is not peeling away from the tube, okay? So it would be, if it wasn't bonded, that plastic, just like that plastic right there is coming up, if you can see it, the orange strip would be coming up too. So I just kind of want to test kind of all around it. So you can see it's not coming up, it's staying bonded with that tube. Now I'm ready to start putting some air in this thing, and but I will put it inside the tire first because I do not want to over pump this. I want to keep this at the right pressure for the tire itself because it's good for the patch. These patches don't really stretch like a tube will. So we want to make sure that this is only going to pump up to the actual size that we want this tire to be. Through there. There we go. Okay. All right. Push you through. Make sure the tube is completely seated in here now. Force one side in now. You can see that. Okay, that's in. Gonna make sure the stem is still in. Perfect. And then this side, I'm gonna start working this side in. And then I'll use my tools once I get close to having it all in. Okay. Almost there. Got it. Tires back in. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to check along here. Let me make sure this is in view so you can see. It's going to check along all of the edges here to make sure the tube is inside the tire so that it doesn't get pinched along the rim. So it's inside on this side. Check the other side. Just make sure it's completely seated inside the tire. Okay, this is looking really good. So now I just need to air it up and we'll see how it goes. All right, it's feeling pretty good. I'm gonna pop it off. We'll see if it holds air. Pretty sure it will. I'm gonna pop it back on my tire. Pop the tire back on the bike. Yeah, let me get my hand there so it'll focus. There we go. So that washer, see how it has that little lip right there? That's gotta go in that hole perfectly. So that's what makes it the hardest part. And at the same time, lining up the disc brake. And so I'll just hold this guy, pull it back, and try to slip this in. So you gotta get it in,
pop it in place, pull this back, let it rest. It helps if you can kind of remember what gear you had it in. That's really helpful. But now I'm gonna try to get that in so it's in where the disc brakes belong. I'm gonna try to get this wire out of the way, okay? And then we're going to rotate and get this guy where he's supposed to be to line up and go in place, okay? So I got that, and I got that, and now it's popped in place there, okay? Let's tighten this back down. These guys lock in together. This guy comes right back up here for me, just loops around, and then just got to tighten these bolts back down, and we're in business. Super simple.